All right, guys, we'll crack on then. Thank you for coming to this session. Today we're going to talk about LUIS, which is, I'm sure you've already seen this in some guides, but it's basically it's a service that you can use to put natural language processing into your applications. I guess for you guys, that's going to be interesting because you're looking to incorporate some kind of natural language element to your bot applications. LUIS is a really, really nice experience for users, and it really makes it easy for consumers to really interact with your bot in interesting ways. So I want to say all the code that I'm going to show you is available at this. I've also distributed this in the Slack channel, so you guys can take this and play around with it in your own time. There's not that much to it, to be honest with you. I think when you'll see it, you'll see how straightforward it is, and most of you will probably be able to just pick it up and run with it. So first of all, I want to talk about some terminology because, there's a few sort of fundamental things that you need to be aware of when we're talking about natural language processing. So if we take an example, throughout this entire talk, I'm going to be talking about a home automation scenario. So, turning on lights, turning the temperature up, opening doors, that kind of thing. So we've got an example here, which is, something a user might say, right? So this is a consumer of your boss application. Here they're saying, set the temperature in the kitchen to 21 degrees. LUIS calls this an utterance, okay? And this is really just a spoken or written message, okay? The intent, which is an output of LUIS, is to set the temperature. So that's what the user's intending to do, if that makes sense. And then the other thing that LUIS will give you is the entities that the user's talking about. And the entities are literally just nouns, things that a user's referring to in the context of an utterance. So here they're saying set the temperature in the kitchen to 21 degrees. The entities here are kitchen, which is a room, and 21 degrees, which is it's a temperature. So how does that work in terms of LUIS? Well, we pass in our utterance to LUIS. It's effectively a black box, right? And it's exposed as an API. And out of that black box, we get an intent. So in this instance, it's to turn on the lights. And then we get our entities that we've specified in the utterance. So here we've got room, which is kitchen. And then the temperature, which is 21 degrees. And obviously, once we've got that information, we can then make intelligent decisions based on that. So, you might be connecting to your Hive system and maybe turning the temperature up in the kitchen based on that action. So before I jump into LUIS, I just want to talk about what LUIS gives you. It gives you two things. The first thing is moderation portal. So this is a thing that you use to define your entities, intents, and you use to train LUIS in terms of what users are going to be saying to your model. And then you publish that model as an API, and you can consume it with any application you want. In this case, I guess most of you will be using a bot, but it's just a RESTful API, so you can consume it with literally anything you want to. So that's it for the slides. I'm going to jump into a demo now, just to kind of show you what this looks like. So just bear with me. So I've logged into LUIS.ai. You guys can all go off and register your own models here, apps in LUIS. All you need is a Microsoft account. And once you've registered, you can see I'm logged in here. You come to this screen, and this is where you define your models or your what LUIS calls your apps. So I'm just going to create a new app just to kind of demonstrate the process that you're going to go through as you create your first application. So I'm just going to give it a name, give it a culture, give it a description if I want. And then I can choose an endpoint key. And this is, if I choose to publish this model out as an API, this is the key. It links to a key in your Cognitive Services Azure account. So I've already set one up, so I'm just going to use that so I can show you the whole end-to-end process. And that's it. So that's created the model, and when the first time I log into the model, you can see you get a bit of a dashboard. It gives you some hints in terms of what you need to do next, but it's quite intuitive. But obviously the key things are we need to define our entities and our intents, right? So I'm going to go in first and I'm going to create an entity. So when I define my entities, there's two types of entities I can define. I can define a custom entity, which could be anything. In this instance, I'm going to use room, but it could literally be anything that users might be talking about. And then there's this thing called pre-built entities, and these are things that Lewis already knows about based on the intelligence that Microsoft has gathered through Bing, basically. So I'm going to go in and add a pre-built entity, and you can see we have a number of sort of common data types that you might want to capture. So things like age, date, time, email addresses, that kind of thing. So the interesting one for me here is if I scroll down to temperature, you can see that it will recognize a temperature. Apologies, it's quite small, but I'll just read that out. It says at the bottom, it says a temperature in Celsius or Fahrenheit. And then it says, it gives some examples of, the kinds of things it recognizes. So it recognizes 32 degrees Fahrenheit, Celsius, 32F, 2 degrees C. So, all different kinds of language patterns, really. So I'm just going to click Save, and that adds it to my model. So that means whenever an utterance is provided to the model, Lewis will attempt to recognize entities that have been defined. Okay, so now I've defined temperature. I'm just going to come in and define my other entity, which is room. So remember, I'm talking about turning lights on, so I might be turning lights on in different rooms. Click Save. So I've defined, that's literally all there is to defining your entities. Now, obviously, this is going to be very domain specific, but you guys can take it from here, really. And the next thing I need to do is add an intent, right? So this is the meaning of what the user's trying to achieve when they say something. So I'm just going to come in and add an intent, exactly the same process. Just give it a name. This one I'm going to say set temperature. Okay. And that's defined the intent. And, I can go and add all kinds of intents for my application, like, open door, close door, turn lights on, turn lights off, that kind of thing. And then if let's refresh that, I can start to type in utterances to begin to train the model, right? So I'm going to say something like, turn up the kitchen to 21 degrees C. And Lewis has gone off. You can see it's tried to classify this utterance I've provided. And it's gone off and it's actually recognized that, temperature. It's picked up the temperature based on that intelligence that the the built-in entities provide you. But obviously it doesn't know anything about kitchen because, what does that mean in the context of this application? So I just need to tell it what that means. So I'm just going to click on this particular phrase and then click room, and that's done. So that's trained it. Well, it's not trained it yet, but it's defined, it's associated an utterance with this particular entity, intent. So what you do is you basically provide as many variations as possible using different language characteristics. So, the key thing is using different people to say the same thing, right? Because everyone says the same thing in a different way. So once you've defined everything, I'm not going to run through the whole process, but obviously, use your imagination. You can then go on to train it. So this is the thing that actually adds some machine intelligence to your Lewis model. Click Train It application. And it'll take a minute, and this is, behind the scenes, it's building up the intelligence such that we can consume it and, provide an utterance, and it'll give us, it'll try to interpret what we mean. So I can then say, set temperature in kitchen to 21 degrees C. So now I've typed this, I'm actually in the testing phase. So I've already trained it. So I'm testing it to see how accurate it is. And you can see actually it's done a pretty good job, even though that language is different to the one that I specified. It's picked up the room and it's picked up the temperature. So, it's out of the box, it pretty much gets you there. Obviously, you just need to train it to make sure it can account for all the different language patterns. Okay, so I've done that. So now I'm going to publish this. I'm happy it's working as expected. So I just need to associate my model with an endpoint key if I haven't already done it. And then I choose where I want to publish, and then I just click publish. And that's going to give me a RESTful endpoint, you can see here, which I can just consume with any RESTful client. And I can do the same thing that you've just seen, but through a RESTful client. So, if you've got any application out there, as long as it can make a HTTP request, you can call into this and, enrich your application with this kind of intelligence. So, apologies, this is quite hard to see, but on the top you've got a queue, and that's literally just the query that we're passing in. So in this instance, I'm going to use another variation. I'm going to say set kitchen to 21 degrees C. So that's, it's another language pattern I haven't trained it to recognize. So hopefully it'll recognize it. So you can see what it gives you back. It gives you, if I just zoom in a little bit, it gives you a JSON object back, and it gives you the top scoring intent on the top. And it's recognized that there's a 99% chance, probability, that when I said set kitchen to 21 degrees C, I actually wanted to set the temperature, right? So it's done a really good job of recognizing that. It's also, if, let's say I had 5 intents and, maybe there's some ambiguity, it'd show me all those intents and they would be ranked in terms of, what the highest probability is. Okay. The other really nice thing it's done is it's pulled out the entities that I'm talking about. So here you've got, it's pulled out the room, which is the kitchen. Again, my application can just consume that. And then it's pulled out the temperature as well at the bottom. So I'm going to jump back to the slides. And we've got an example. If I just pull up the slide deck. So we've got an example of layering this intelligence into to a bot, which you guys are presumably quite interested in. So I just want to sort of talk you through the architecture, if you like, of what this looks like. So your user's going to say something, right, through one of these channels. You guys are all familiar with channels now. That gets routed to your API controller down here. Yep. And then maybe you've got a dialogue, a Lewis dialogue. Okay, and that Lewis dialogue is bound to this Lewis model over here, and it basically sends the utterance and receives intent and entities back. And yeah, maybe you've got some business logic off the back of that as well. Okay, so I'm just going to switch over and jump into the code. So I'll just... So this is going to be really quick because it's really, really straightforward. But what we've got, I don't know how many of you guys have started using dialogues. Yeah, you've been using dialogues. So this is just another type of dialogue. It's a specialist type of dialogue that's designed to work with Lewis models. Okay, so that's the key bit there, Lewis dialogue. So to make this work, there's basically 3 things we need to do. First of all, we need to add this attribute, Lewis model at the top, and into that we need to provide our model ID, which you can get from, it's basically that ID there, and then our subscription key, which is that value there. Provide that to the dialogue as part of that attribute, and then we need to just map each intent that we've defined to a method on this dialogue. It's really simple, and all you do is add an attribute and, type the same name as you've already defined, and it takes care of the work for you. So in here, just to kind of illustrate, the richness you can get for pretty much nothing, I'm pulling out the room from the entities that Bot Framework provides to me. I'm pulling out the temperature, and then I'm posting it back to the user, and then if there's a value for the room provided, I'm posting it back as well, and if there's a temperature, I'm posting it back. So simple as that. Nothing complicated in there. Obviously, if you had your own scenario, you might branch out to a back-end system. Use your imagination. Okay, and all I've done is I've repeated that for each intent that I've got on the model. Okay, so I've got a few different intents there. So I've already published this out, so I'm going to hopefully show you this in Messenger so you guys can see what it looks like in Messenger. Can you all see that, by the way, at the back? Yep, good. So I can literally just say, this set kitchen to 21 degrees C, and that's going to go off, hopefully, and come back to me. There we go. So it's typing something. Setting the temperature. Identified the room, it's identified the temperature. And I'm going to kind of leave it at that. I don't want to go too much into the detail because a lot of this is really intuitive. But I want to leave you guys with the code so you can take it yourselves and play. And if you've got any questions, please, I'm in there in the middle table, so please come and see me and I'll help if I can. So just jump back to the slide deck just so I can show you the code link again. So the code's there. And then there's some just general bot framework resources if you guys are interested in having a look at some of those things. We've got Gary's blog on there, which is really useful. I know someone's talked to me about layering in Lewis with Q&A Maker, and I know Gary's done some work with that already. So if you want to have a look at that, and there's other really useful resources as well. But that's it. Thank you for your time, and